Hello, and welcome to Minutes with Morgan. Before we get started, I wanted to take an opportunity and let you know that the stories that you're about to hear will make you feel. They will break your heart, they will make you cry, but they will make you think. And if you allow it to, with an open heart and an open mind, it will motivate you to change the world. Every single year, 20 million children are in desperate need of pediatric, palliative, and hospice care. We are on the cusp of being able to make this an international conversation so that these families and these children can get the care that they so deserve. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started. Thank you all for tuning in to Minutes with Morgan. I am here on our newest episode with Suzanne Gwynn, who is the founder of Ladybug House in Seattle. How are you doing tonight, Suzanne?
I'm doing really well, Morgan. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to do this interview with me. I know that you and I both value this so much. And when we first got introduced, it was funny because Katie of Crescent Cove here in Minnesota was so adamant on us meeting. And besides our conjoined mission, I was like, gosh, Katie, what is it about this lady that you really want me to meet her? But I totally get it. And your fire and your passion for this is outstanding. And I am honored to work with you on this process and on this journey together. And I'm excited for people to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. It is a true honor to be here. Katie has been a gift, through this process, and along with it, she's brought you. So let's do this. Let's build these houses.
Yes. All right. Speaking of these houses and this mission, tell me, why hospice for children?
Why not? I've been a pediatric oncology nurse for over 33 years now. And over 30 years, I spent at the bedside working night shift. And when I first moved to the States 20 years ago, I was working bone marrow transplant. And we were getting people from all over the world at that time, not just all over the country. And these kids were not getting home. They were not ever getting out of the hospital. They were never having a visit with any family outside of the hospital room. And then they were going home in a coffin, and these families had to bear that was their last memory with them. Then as things started progressing, medicine progressed a little bit, we were still getting kids from all over the country coming here for transplant. Ladybug House isn't just about that. It's like hospice care is something that exists for adults, but it doesn't exist for kids. And so when I started doing some research, seeing all these kids in the hospital without choices, I realized that there was support. It started in the UK over 30 years ago, and they have 54 homes there. But yet here in the United States, we have only 2 houses, one in San Leandro, California, and one in Arizona. And when I first started looking into it over 20 years ago, we still have only 2 houses. And so therefore, you see a need and you think, well, after you've told everybody somebody should do something, you realize that somebody's you.
Right. Well, I thank you for being that person. It's such an interesting thing to say when you realize that in the UK, as you mentioned, which for those of you watching at home, the United Kingdom is roughly the size of Michigan, so keep that perspective in. And they have over 54 homes. But the United States, which is this huge, huge country, we have 2, and they're both on the West Coast. And right. I know as a mom with 2, by the grace of God, 2 healthy kids, even just going to Target and getting them in the car and getting them there and getting the groceries and getting back is such a process. I cannot imagine trying to pack my child who has a terminal condition, all of the medical equipment, my family, and then make it to the West Coast and then find some way to be a family together in such a sacred time.
Right, exactly. And in the UK, like you were saying, the UK has 63 million people and they have 54 homes. We have 320 million people and only 2. We need in our country to build 242 more homes just to meet per capita what the UK is doing.
Wow. That's a statistic for sure. I know when people talk about children's hospice or don't talk about children's hospice and palliative care, they always focus on the emotional aspect, which is that huge blockade for them. But for some people, hearing statistics and hearing facts is what's going to capture their attention, really help them become a part of this cause. So that statistic alone is huge.
Mm-hmm.
But why?
It really is. And like you say, it's one of those topics that, it's one of those things that's just unimaginable. You know, when you lose a spouse, you're a widower or widower, or you lose a parent, you're an orphan. But to lose a child, there's no name for it. It's unimaginable. You know, it's something we don't want to talk about. We're a death phobic society as it is, but then you add children to that equation, and all you hear is next to impossible to get the message out there regarding the need, because people will say it's too sad. It's too sad to watch the videos. It's too sad to hear the stories. It's too sad to know the statistics. But until we get our heads out of the sand and we realize that for so many families, this isn't an option, you know, and it's like today, every day there are families out there who are walking into a hospital room or their doctor's office thinking their child has a flu, or thinking their child has, you know, a stomach ache, or they're having growing pains. And then they find out that their world is about to change forever. Because not only is the diagnosis going to take them to a different place today, for the rest of their lives, that diagnosis will affect them. Because even when they're cured, every time they have that scan, every time they have that blood result, you know, the numbers of reoccurrences for children is so high. And so tomorrow, that could be any of us. That could be my grandchild. It could be, sadly, your child. It could be any of our children. We have to start talking about it.
You know what's interesting is that you mentioned that it could happen to anyone. And with this specific cause, everyone knows of a child who has unfortunately had their life cut short by a terminal condition, whether it be cancer, whether it be muscular dystrophy, whatever it is. Everyone knows someone. You can scroll down Facebook and see an article that was shared 7,000 times in 10 minutes about a child who is receiving birthday cards because they're in a hospital. That is a form of therapy for that child, and people care about it. But why is it that when we basically have the power to change it or to do something or to have the conversation, why do you think that we shut down to a point where this is not accessible?
I think one of the big things is that it gets too close to home. If this can be your child and I jump into it, tomorrow it could be my child. You know, it's just, it is, pardon me, it is so sad to think about. It's one of those things that we don't want to imagine, but it's, I wish I had an answer. I wish I had an answer that would make it all better, because every single day I try. I spent the evening talking to a couple of friends of mine. We were brainstorming the same thing. Like, what do we do? Do we make a fun video? Do we make a spoof? Like, do we make animations? What do we do to get people's attention, to get them to listen that their neighbors, their community is suffering, and that this isn't just about end-of-life support. This is about life support. It's not just about hospice care, which is end-of-life care. It's about palliative care. It's about from the time of diagnosis through the spectrum, and whether or not the child, you know, recovers and goes on to live a full and healthy life, or that life is cut short. Palliative care is to support the child from the beginning of diagnosis through the end, and not only the child, but the entire family. Ladybug House wants to be that place that is that bridge between home and hospital. It wants to be that place to allow families to come in and have a rest. And then it wants to be that option for end-of-life support. Just doesn't currently exist.
So what would having Ladybug House and like houses mean to a family who is currently going through one of the most horrible times in their life?
Imagine for a moment that, you know, you're going to your parents' house. Your family is all together. You're sleeping in that room. You know in the morning that when your children wake up, you don't have to get up with them. That somebody's going to prepare them a great meal in the morning, and they're going to play with them and tell them stories and bathe them and get them dressed. You know that you don't have to rush downstairs. You can rest and sleep in, because when you get up, somebody will have saved you food, or they'll prepare a meal for you. You can shower in leisure. You can go for a walk. You can have those difficult conversations because you know your children are being taken care of. That's Ladybug House. It's that place where you have a sense of family and a sense of community. You don't have to be afraid of those words. Some people, you know, ask questions. You mean you're going to have hospice on one end, like you'll have children dying but you'll also have respite support and support for families while their children are going through treatment. We're like, yes, because the goal of Ladybug House is to let people know that there's a community out there for you, that we're all in this together. We're holding each other's hands. We've got your back. And I think that that's what it is. We've become a society where we're so sheltered. We live inside our houses and our homes. We don't know our neighbors and their burdens. We don't know their worries and their woes. And honestly, our lives are so busy that so often we don't want to. Mm-hmm. This would be a place where we do hold each other's hands. We walk that path with you. And after the child is passed, if that's where the journey takes them, we will be there for the family for as long as they need us.
Wow. It's just so mind-blowing to think that there aren't hundreds of Ladybug houses, that there aren't hundreds of George Mark Children's Homes, that there aren't hundreds of Crescent Coves and Ryan houses all over, not just the U.S., but all over the world, because this impacts 20 million children worldwide. And there are just, in that retrospect, just a handful of these homes and of this kind of support. So for now, we have families who not only are dealing with this, but also have to find a place for the end of life for their child. Where right now you can choose your home, and if you have siblings or even living in that home after the fact, is usually filled with a very hard memory. Or you have a hospital which doesn't provide the freedom that a child would desire. And oftentimes, they have spent so much time in a hospital, it's like, why or what kind of comfort could this possibly provide? And then Mariah's case, you have an adult hospice, which oftentimes is not the case for a lot of families because they don't have the support or the staffing or the medical equipment or the environment to house a child. And so then you're stuck. And so where do they go? And unless you're on the West Coast, you don't have anywhere. And that is mind-blowing.
And then you think that, on the West Coast there is only, there's Ryan House and there's George Mark House. But the thing is, too, that people will say, too, like, there's Ronald McDonald House. But Ronald McDonald House is lodging for the family while the child is in the hospital. It's not a place for supportive care, which a lot of people think about. We're very fortunate here in Seattle because we have Providence Hospice, which is a home hospice visiting program, but they are not always available. We've had many families who have had terrible stories only because there's just not enough nursing staff to get there when you need them. When you're not able to handle your child's pain or their symptoms at 2 o'clock in the morning on a weekend, there's no one to come out there for you, and you're left alone making those decisions. Or you're rushing back to the hospital. And people say the kids want to die at home, and the truth is families don't want them to die in the hospital, and right now there's no other option for them. So we're saying make these options of like houses. There are several of us around the country trying to do this, but we're stunted by the fact that there's no pediatric hospice policy in our country. We're stunted by the fact that trying to get people to talk about this and awareness. Here in Seattle we have over 26 animal hospices. We have over 400 animal hospices in this country. We have over 4,000 adult hospices, but yet we have only 2 for children. And I'm not saying it. We have 3 dogs in our family and a cat, and I love them to death. And I feel guilty when I put that statistic out there. But as I'm dealing with my aging cat, and I'm feeling, remorse, and I'm feeling anxiety, I can pick the phone up and talk to somebody about what's happening and get support. If that were my grandchild, it's not out there. I don't have that same support. Don't our children deserve the same or more? I'm not saying take away from someone else. I'm saying let's do this. And, as we work together, all of us with like houses, there are a few, there are those of us who are like-minded out here. We share everything we have. We sacrifice our families. We sacrifice our time and our jobs to try and build these resources for the community. But we can't do it alone. We need the community to back us up. We need our country to realize that there is a need that is not being recognized, and that is the fact that children are dying. Less than 1% of kids in this country have palliative and hospice support available to them outside of a hospital setting. I think we can do better than that. We are a country full of resources, the best health care, the most advances in medicine. We need to do better when it comes to end-of-life support.
I know when we had first talked, you had said something to me that was very profound. So when we talk about the United States and we talk about our position in the world and the advancements we have made over hundreds of years, where do we stand next to the United Kingdom?
I mean, the United Kingdom has been doing this for 30 years. They started with Helen House almost 33 years ago. And since then, they're building their 54th house right now. I actually spoke to Martin Edwards from Julia's house yesterday morning. 54, they just broke ground. In the 2 years since I became a 501c3, they have built 5 houses in the last 2 years. The Duchess of Cambridge supports them. Their parliament supports them. People think that because it's socialized medicine that they get support from their country. They only get 4% from their government. Canada and British Columbia is where the first one in North America was built 20 years ago. They're a proven, sustainable model operating on a $9 million budget. They only get $1.4 million from their government. The rest is philanthropy and community giving. It is proven that communities can support this process.
You mentioned something about Canada. So me in Minnesota, Canada is not too far from me. But here I've been working with Crescent Cove and trying to get the awareness piece there and get this home built here. And it's almost frustrating to realize that literally just across a border, there is a home and there are homes, and this is something that they have as a country realized is important. And just a few hundred miles this way, we still are struggling to get that traction so that people are also passionate about this so that these homes can be built. And it's frustrating.
There's something about the conversation that just shuts people down. And I don't know what it is. I understand that death is not a comfortable topic, but as I said before, we're not just talking about end-of-life support. We're truly talking about life support for the whole family, life support where these children have legacies, they have hopes and dreams, and so many of these kids are so brave. I mean, they want to graduate high school and they want to go to prom and they want to, have make-a-wishes. And, we're talking about make-a-wish every day. Like, what rule can we break today for every child? Let's not wait until, I had a boy who I took care of from the time he was 5. I gave him his bone marrow transplant when he was 5. His family was from Eastern Washington, and they would drive up here, and the whole family would come. I don't know when his siblings went to school, really. He had 2 sisters and 2 younger brothers. They would stay at the hospital with him until 2 or 3 in the morning because families aren't allowed to sleep at the hospital, right? Mm-hmm. So they would walk around, they would eat, they'd go to Ronald McDonald House, but at 7:30 when visiting hours started, they would all come back. And then they would sleep till 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon, all of them, in a room together. And that's when they then started their day. They walked around the hospital, they went to the cafeteria, and then they repeated this later on again, 1 or 2 in the morning. Mom would take all the kids over to Ronald McDonald House for those few hours because the kids were falling asleep and couldn't legally sleep at the hospital. He died when he was 19. I took care of him for 14 years. The night that he died, I was there. And his parents wanted so desperately to get away from the hospital because they didn't want to be there. So I bathed his body, and I put him on a gurney, and I took him down to the loading dock, and I put him in the back seat of his family's truck over his brother and his sister's lap, and they drove back to Eastern Washington. If Ladybug House had existed, he still would have died. But maybe they would have felt a bit of home. Maybe they would have had a sense of, being able to just rest and to be and to have a little bit of just like, we're going to be okay. I can't even imagine that drive, And it's just like there are story after story after story like that. And I have thousands of kids tucked away in my heart, in my head. And because of them, and because their families deserve so much more, because the families of the children who are being diagnosed today and tomorrow, whether it's cancer or whether it's mitochondrial disease or cystic fibrosis or sickle cell or a neuromuscular disease or whatever fate they're being given, those families deserve the support of their community. They deserve to have an atmosphere where they can just have some normalcy, where they don't have to be caregivers all the time, but cared for. They deserve the same benefits that they would have if they were older.
If that doesn't touch the hearts of the people watching or make sense to those who are still on the fence of why this is so important, I don't know what else will. I think that this story is too common to be 2016 in the United States of America. This story is too common. You have connected me with so many families that could have benefited from Ladybug House and like houses, whose this is their story, and this will be the stories of people thereafter until these homes are built. So, exactly. From the bottom of my heart, and I am sure on behalf of the families that could have benefited from your home, thank you for not being afraid to the point where your fear limits what you are able to do for them. Because your passion and your willingness to step around that fear and turn that energy into this huge project that will change the world, we thank you, because it changed my view on everything. It changes the views of people that are watching this. It just takes one person to realize that their fear is not greater than the pain of these families. So
yes, we need those people who can, we have those people in need, and we have those people that can make a difference. And for us, we need them to step forth. For me, I've been at this for 3 years while I still work at a cancer clinic, taking care of adult patients now, day shift. And every day, I'm like, every day I give to this because I believe it will happen. But us, myself, other like houses, we need those people who have the ability to help make this happen, who can give land, who can give money, who can give support in other ways. We need them to step forward and join our efforts.
Well, you heard it right from Suzanne Gwynn. This is your call to action. I challenge you, if you have allowed yourself to open your heart and open your mind and watch this video and be touched and informed, I challenge you to let this be your call to action. Go ahead and head to www.ladybughouse.org to learn more about Suzanne Gwynn, her mission, and what we can do together as a country. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Bless you. Thank you.